A quick thank you to my one and only Patreon member. We've got to know each other over TikTok and a few other things, but thank you so much, man. You are absolutely awesome. All right, back to the video. Bum, 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 bum. Today we're talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the 1971 film based on Roald Dahl's 1964 book. And I already know what some of you are thinking. Man, it's just a kids movie about candy and golden tickets. Why are you reading so deep into this? And that's exactly the response that allows prophecy to function, because here's how prophecy works in the material realm. It hides in plain sight. It speaks in parables, in stories, in symbols that the masses consume as entertainment while the truth is transmitted underneath. Jesus spoke in parables for this exact reason, so those with ears to hear could hear, and those who weren't ready would just hear a nice story about seeds and soil. The prophetic word conceals itself in the mundane so it can reach the people who need it without triggering the defense mechanisms of those who would resist it. Willy Wonka isn't a children's story. It's a prophecy about the death of an empire. It's a warning about what happens when a system built on exploitation, spectacle, and manufactured scarcity reaches its terminal phase. And Roald Dahl, whether he understood it consciously or was just a vessel for what the spirit was needing him to communicate, gave us the exact blueprint for where America is right now in 2026. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying Roald Dahl sat down and said, I'm gonna write an allegory about American imperial decline. Most prophets don't know what they're doing. Most prophets don't know they're prophetic when they're doing the work. They're just compelled to create, to write, and to speak the truth. That's how divine communication works. It uses artists, storytellers, musicians, anyone with the ability to transmit patterns to large audiences. So we're going to break this down methodically. We're going to look at the structure, the characters, the symbols, the warnings, and the ultimate prophecy embedded in this history. And by the end of this, you're going to see America way differently. Let's get into this. First, we need to understand when this was written and what was happening in the world. Roald Dahl published Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 1964. The film came out in 1971. This matters tremendously because timing is everything in prophecy. In 1964, America was at the height of post-World War II dominance. The economy was booming, consumer culture was exploding, television was bringing manufactured desire into every home. The suburbs were expanding, the American dream was being mass-produced and distributed like factory goods. This was the era when people genuinely believed that capitalism and democracy had won, that prosperity would continue forever, that every generation would do better than the last. But underneath that prosperity, the cracks were already forming. The civil rights movement was exposing the fundamental lie of American equality, that this prosperity was built on the backs of enslaved and exploited people, and that the dream was only available to certain people in certain places. The Vietnam War was beginning to reveal the true nature of American empire, that it would destroy entire countries to maintain its dominance. The environmental movement was starting to recognize that infinite growth on a finite planet is a death cult. And in the middle of this, Roald Dahl writes a story about a mysterious factory that produces pure pleasure with no nutritional value, run by a reclusive genius who exploits foreign labor and invites children to compete for the chance to inherit an unsustainable system. You see it? The prophecy was already there. By the time the film came out in 1971, America was in a different place. Nixon was president, Watergate was brewing, the Vietnam War had shattered the myth of American righteousness, the oil crisis was coming, stagflation was on the horizon. The cracks weren't cracks anymore, they were fractures. And the film adaptation leaned into the darkness of the story in ways that made it even more prophetic. Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka isn't a whimsical chocolatier of children's fantasy. He's manic, unpredictable, borderline psychopathic. He watches children get destroyed by their own appetites, and he barely reacts. He sings a haunting song about pure imagination while literally traumatizing kids in a psychedelic tunnel of nightmare imagery. This is not a benevolent wizard. This is an empire in human form. Charismatic, creative, brilliant, and fundamentally broken. So when we analyze the story, we're not just looking at fiction. We're looking at a prophetic transmission that captured the exact moment when American empire began its long, slow collapse into chaos we're living through right now. The factory is America. The tour is our collective experience navigating through this system. And the question is, are we Augustus, Veruca, Violet, Mike, or are we Charlie, believing we can inherit this machinery and somehow make it righteous? Now let's break down the actual structure of the story, because this is where the allegory becomes impossible to ignore. Every element of Willy Wonka's world maps directly onto the mechanisms of American capitalism and empire. Willy Wonka's factory is massive, visible to everyone in the city, but completely closed off. No one goes in, no one comes out. No one knows how it operates. The product appears in stores worldwide, but the means of production is hidden. This is exactly how modern capitalism functions. You consume the iPhone, but you don't see it. The cobalt mines in Congo or the factory workers in Shenzhen jumping off buildings. You consume the chocolate, but you don't see the child slaves on cocoa plantations in West Africa. You consume the empire, but you don't see the military bases in 80 countries or the coups installing favorable governments. The production is hidden. The violence is hidden. The exploitation is hidden. All you see is the magical product that appears on the shelf. And Wonka doesn't just hide the production, he mystifies it. He turns it into spectacle, into wonder, into pure imagination. He makes you focus on the magic so you don't ask about the machinery. That's exactly what American empire does. It gives you Hollywood, it gives you sports, it gives you social media dopamine, it gives you endless entertainment. Anything to keep you from asking how the system actually functions and who it's crushing to maintain itself. Let's talk about the Oompa Loompas, because this is where Dahl either accidentally or deliberately reveals the colonial violence underlying the whole system. In the original book, the Oompa Loompas are described as African pygmies that Wonka discovered as rescued from a hostile jungle. He brings them to his factory and pays them in cocoa beans because that's what they like. The film changes them to orange-skinned fantasy creatures, but the dynamic is the same. Think about what this represents. A white European man goes to a primitive land, finds people living there, decides they need saving, and imports them to work in his factory for subsistence wages. Not even the real money, just the raw material he controls. And he's presented as their savior. He rescued them. This is the exact logic of colonialism. This is the exact logic of American empire. We're not exploiting you, we're liberating you, bringing you civilization. You should be grateful for the opportunity to serve us. And the Oompa Loompas never leave the factory. They live there. They work there. They sing morality lessons to justify the system that employs them. They've been so thoroughly integrated into Wonka's empire that they can't imagine existence outside of it. That's successful colonization. That's what empire does. It makes the colonized believe that their colonization is natural, necessary, even beneficial. We're all trapped in a factory, singing songs that justify our own exploitation. Now we get the central mechanism of the story, the golden tickets. 5 tickets hidden randomly in chocolate bars distributed worldwide. Anyone could win. All you have to do is keep buying, keep consuming, keep hoping that the next bar might be the one. This is the American dream distilled into the purest form. It's a lottery. It's not based on merit, despite what we tell ourselves. It's based on chances, access, and the ability to keep consuming. Augustus finds his ticket because his family owns a butcher shop and can afford unlimited chocolate. Veruca gets hers because her father bought thousands of bars and hired workers to open them. The system is rigged from the beginning, but it maintains the illusion that anyone could win. And Charlie, poor deserving Charlie. He finds his ticket by chance. When his grandpa gives him money for a birthday bar, and then through a random dollar he finds in the street. Pure luck. But the story frames it as destiny, as reward for his pure heart. That's the myth. America tells itself, if you're good enough, if you're pure enough, if you just keep trying, you'll get your chance. But the truth is, the system is designed so that most people never get a ticket. And those who do get it, mostly get it because they were already positioned to win. And here's the crucial detail. Only 5 tickets for the entire world, and there's only one winner. The system isn't designed to uplift everyone. It's designed to create competition, to make people fight each other for scraps, while the person at the top, Wonka, maintains total control. That's not a bug of capitalism, that's the feature. Manufactured scarcity creates competition. Competition creates desperation, and desperation makes people accept conditions they would never accept if they had real alternatives. Now we get to the heart of the prophecy, the 5 children. Each one represents a different path that America consumer culture creates, and each one represents a different way that the system destroys the people it claims to serve. And the brilliance of this prophecy is that we're supposed to see this as individual moral failures: gluttony, greed, vanity, violence, when really these are all systemic products. The factory didn't just attract these kids, it created them. Augustus is the first to fall, and he falls the fastest. He's pure, unrestrained consumption. He sees the chocolate river and he can't help himself. He has to drink it directly from the source. He doesn't even use a cup. He just puts his face in the river and drinks. And then what happens? He falls in. Then he gets sucked up from a pipe. He's removed from the story entirely. This is America drowning in its own abundance. We have more food than we could ever eat. And yet, we have an obesity epidemic. We have more information than we could ever process, and yet we're drowning in it, unable to distinguish truth from noise. We have more entertainment than we could consume in 10 lifetimes, and yet we're bored, anxious, depressed. Augustus represents what happens when you give people unlimited access to pleasure without teaching them restraint, purpose, or wisdom. But here's a deeper layer. Augustus is German. His last name is Gloop, almost glut. Dahl was writing this less than 20 years after World War II. Germany had just gone through the ultimate expression of nationalist consumption, believing it could consume other nations, other peoples, to fuel its own expansion, and it drowned in that appetite. Augustus is a warning about what happens when nations, like individuals, believe they can consume without consequence. Donald Trump. And watch how Wonka reacts. He's barely concerned. The system doesn't mourn its casualties, it processes them. Augustus will be squeezed, compressed, and turned into product. His destruction becomes part of the production. That's empire. It doesn't waste anything, not even its victims. Veruca Salt is old money, generational wealth. Her father runs a peanut factory. He's capital himself. And when Veruca wants a golden ticket, he doesn't tell her to earn it or work for it. He buys thousands of chocolate bars and has his factory workers spend days opening them all until they find one. Veruca has never earned anything in her life. She never had to. Everything she wants, Daddy provides. Her name tells you everything: Veruca Salt. A Veruca is a planterwort, a growth that appears painful and persistent. Salt preserves, but also corrodes. She's a persistent irritation that corrodes everything around her. And her defining characteristics is the phrase, "I want it now! What's the matter with those twats?" Immediate gratification with no conception of delay, sacrifice, or consequence. This is what generational wealth does to people. When you've never experienced scarcity, never had to wait, never had to struggle, you become like Veruca. Demanding, entitled, throwing tantrums when the universe doesn't bend to your will. And we see this in American culture at large. The post-war generation that benefited from the greatest wealth transfer in human history now demands that the world continues catering to them, regardless of the cost to future generations. I want cheap gas now. I want low taxes now. I want my retirement secured now. And they'll vote for anyone who promises them these things, even if it means destroying the future. And how does Veruca fall? Well, she wants a golden goose. She wants to own the means of production itself. And when Wonka tells her no, she has a breakdown. She stomps her feet and demands and pushes until she falls down the garbage chute, judged as a bad egg and disposed of. The system eventually eats even the entitled when they try to take more than they're allocated. Veruca thought her wealth made her immune to consequences. She learned otherwise. Violet is the achievement culture kid. She's a champion gum chewer, not because she enjoys gum, but because she wants to win at something. Anything. Her mother has raised her to be competitive, aggressive, always striving to be the first, to be noticed, to be exceptional. Violet doesn't care about the chocolate factory. She cares about winning the golden ticket. She cares about being on TV. She cares about being recognized as special. This is American meritocracy culture. The belief that you have to constantly optimize yourself, constantly improve, constantly compete to justify your existence. Violet isn't enjoying her childhood. She's performing it. She's collecting achievements like trading cards. And we see this in modern America. Kids with resumes by age 12, competing for college admissions like it's the Hunger Games and measuring their worth by the productivity and their rankings relative to others. And what destroys Violet? The experimental gum that's a 3-course meal. She can't resist being the first to try it. Even when Wonka warns her it's not ready, she has to be the first. She has to prove she's bold enough, special enough, and she swells up like a giant blueberry. She literally inflates with her own pride until she becomes a grotesque parody of herself. She's still alive, she's still conscious, but she's been transformed into something monstrous by her own ambition. That's what achievement culture does. It takes people who could be whole, external validation until they become nothing but their accomplishments. They lose their humanity in pursuit of being special, and the system doesn't care. Wonka just has her rolled away, back to the completion, back to the grind. The system needs people like Violet. It runs on their anxiety and their endless striving. And then there's Mike Teevee. His name literally tells you his problem. Television. Mike doesn't want chocolate. He doesn't want candy. Mike wants to be on television. He wants to be the spectacle. He's completely disconnected from physical reality and living entirely through screens. He's watching gangster shows, westerners, war movies, constantly stimulated by violence, and he's absorbed it all as his identity. This is media-saturated children. This is kids raised by YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, constantly performing for an invisible audience, constantly consuming content, constantly seeking stimulation. And the violence part matters. Mike is normalized to violence. He thinks it's entertainment. He thinks it's cool. He's been desensitized to the point to where he can't distinguish play from harm. And what does Mike do when he sees Wonka's television chocolate? The ability to transmit matter through screens? He immediately decides to send himself through the TV. He wants to be the content. He wants to exist inside of the spectacle, and when he emerges, he's shrunk. He's distinguished. He's smaller than he was. The screen made him less than human. This is where we are in 2026. A generation of people living through screens, performing their lives for metric, consuming manufactured realities, disconnected from their actual bodies, disconnected from nature, and disconnected from community. Their attention spans are shrinking. Their empathy is shrinking. Their ability to exist in physical space with other humans is shrinking. Mike Teevee is the prophecy of the digital age, written before to talk about what happens after each child falls. The Oompa Loompas sing every time. They sing detailed songs explaining exactly what went wrong, why the child deserved their fate, and what moral lessons should we learn. They're educational, they're catchy, they make the violence seem natural, justified, even wholesome. This is a system narrating its own casualties as teaching moments. When someone falls through the cracks in capitalism, we don't question the cracks. We analyze their personal failings. They didn't work hard enough. They made bad choices. They should have known better. The system produces the casualties, then produces the narrative that justifies those casualties. The Oompa Loompas, their exploited labor, are singing the songs that blame the victims for their own destruction. That's how successful propaganda works. So 4 children have fallen, 4 warnings have been delivered, and we're left with Charlie Bucket, the protagonist, the hero, the pure-hearted poor boy who's going to inherit the whole factory and presumably make it righteous, right? That's what we're supposed to believe, but let's look closer at what Charlie represents and what his victory actually means. Charlie Bucket is poor, really poor. His family lives in a tiny shack. His 4 grandparents share one bed. His father works at a toothpaste factory screwing caps on tubes until he's replaced by a machine. They eat cabbage soup. They're barely surviving. And Charlie, sweet, innocent Charlie, never complains. He's grateful. He's obedient. He accepts his suffering with grace. He's the perfect poor person according to the American moral imagination. This is crucial. Charlie wins not because he's smarter than the other kids, not because he works harder, not because he has some special skill. He wins because he's still hungry in the right way. He hasn't been corrupted by abundance. He still has desire, but not entitlement. He still has appetite, but not gluttony. He's poor enough to be grateful, but not so broken that he's angry about his poverty. He's the mythical deserving poor, the person who suffers nobly and waits patiently for salvation rather than demanding justice. And this is the lie that American capitalism needs to maintain. It needs us to believe that poverty is a test of character, that if you're good enough, pure enough, patient enough, eventually the system will reward you. That somewhere out there is a golden ticket with your name on it. That your suffering has meaning because it's teaching you to appreciate what you have. This mythology keeps people docile. It keeps them from organizing. It keeps them from questioning why there's poverty at all in the richest nation in human history. But even Charlie isn't perfect according to the Wonka system. There's the crucial moment with the fizzy lifting drinks. Grandpa Joe convinces Charlie to drink them when Wonka isn't looking. They steal. They break the rules. They float up to the ceiling and almost get shredded by the fan. They barely escape with their lives, and Wonka knows about that. This is the test. It's the moment that reveals what the system really values. It's not goodness, it's loyalty, it's obedience. Charlie and Grandpa Joe broke the rules when they thought no one was watching. They demonstrated that given the opportunity, they would pursue their own desires at the expense of the rules. And for that, according to Wonka,
so you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
But then comes the real test. Slugworth, the supposed competitor. He offered Charlie money for an everlasting gobstopper, Wonka's latest secret invention. All Charlie has to do is betray Wonka's trust, sell the gobstopper, and his family will have money. They'll escape poverty. He has every rational reason to do it, but he doesn't. He returns the gobstopper to Willy Wonka's desk without a word and walks away. And this is when Wonka reveals the truth. Slugworth was never a competitor. He was Wonka in disguise. The whole thing was a test of loyalty. The opposition was controlled. The choice was an illusion. The system created a fake alternative to see if you would betray it when you thought you could get away with it. This is exactly how empire functions. It creates controlled opposition. It gives you the illusion of choice between paths that all serve the same master. And if you choose loyalty, even when it hurts you, even when it makes you no rational sense, then you're considered worthy to inherit the system. So Charlie passes the test. He's loyal, he's obedient, he's grateful, and Wonka gives him everything. The factory, the formula, the entire empire.
You won!
What?
The jackpot, my dear sir. The grand and glorious jackpot.
The chocolate?
The chocolate, yes, the chocolate. But that's just the beginning.
The glass elevator breaks through the ceiling. They fly over the city, the music swells. It's presented as liberation, as victory, as the ultimate reward for goodness. Roll the credits. Happily ever after, right? But what did Charlie actually win? He won the responsibility for maintaining a system built on hidden production, exploited labor, manufactured scarcity, and spectacle. He won the burden of keeping the Oompa Loompas working in conditions we never examined. He won the isolation that drove Wonka himself into paranoid reclusiveness. He won the same machinery that destroyed the other 4 children. He won the factory. The story ends before we see what Charlie does with his power. Does he change the factory? Does he pay the Oompa Loompas fairly? Does he open the gates and share the chocolate with the world? Does he use the power to end poverty? Or does he become the next Wonka? Isolated, paranoid, dependent on spectacle to maintain control, eventually looking for his own heir when he recognizes the instability of what he's inherited. The prophecy suggests he'll become the next Wonka, because that's how empire works. It doesn't matter who's in charge if the structure itself is corrupt. You can't inherit a system built on exploitation and somehow make it just by being a better person. The system shapes the person, not the other way around. Charlie's victory isn't liberation, it's indoctrination into the machinery of the empire. He's been promoted from victim to administrator, and he'll spend the rest of his life managing the violence that he used to suffer under. That's the darkest prophecy in this story, that even the pure-hearted, when given the keys to the empire, will become the empire. That the system is stronger than the individual virtue, that you can't reform what needs to be dismantled. Now let's talk about Willy Wonka himself, because he's the most important character in this prophecy. He's not the hero. He's not the villain. He is the warning. He's what happens when genius disconnects from humanity. Wonka's backstory is crucial. He was a chocolatier, an innovator, a genius, and at some point his competitors started stealing his secrets. So he closed the factory. He fired all his workers. He shut himself off from the world. And when he reopened, it was with Oompa Loompas. Workers who would never leave, never compete, never betray him. He created a completely controlled environment where he could operate without vulnerability. This is the billionaire mindset. This is the tech oligarch mindset. When you reach that level of wealth and power, you stop seeing other people as people. They're either assets or threats. You can't trust anyone because everyone wants something from you. So you withdraw. You build walls. You surround yourself with people who are completely dependent on you and therefore unable to challenge you. You create your own reality, your own rules, your own world. And you convince yourself that this isolation is necessary for your genius to flourish. But look at what it's done to Wonka. He's manic. He's erratic. He has no moral human relationship. He watches children get destroyed and barely reacts. He's created this elaborate world of pure imagination, but he's completely alone in it. The genius has curdled into something that resembles madness.
Watch the pipe.
That's what Empire does to the emperors themselves. It doesn't just destroy the conquered, it destroys the conquerors. And now Wonka is old. He's tired. He recognizes that he can't maintain this forever, but here's the problem. He doesn't have anyone to pass it to. He has no children. He has no friends. He has no one he trusts. He spent decades in paranoid isolation, and he needs someone to inherit an empire that he built specifically to exclude everyone. That's the contradiction. So he creates the golden ticket lottery, but it's not really a lottery, it's a test. He's looking for someone who has enough innocence to be trustworthy, but enough discipline to follow their rules. Someone who wants the factory, but not for the wrong reasons. Someone who will maintain the system exactly as it is, without questioning its foundations. He's not looking for a reformer, he's looking for a successor. This is America right now. The generation that built the post-war empire, the boomers, the silent generation, they're old. They're dying. They've extracted everything they could from the system, and now they're looking at younger generations and asking, who's going to keep the machinery running? And who's going to protect our wealth and our comfort and our dominance? And they're confused because younger people keep asking inconvenient questions like, why do we have this system at all? Why is it built on exploitation? Why can't we change it? Wonka represents the empire in its late stage, recognizing its own instability but unable to imagine anything different. So it looks for someone to pass the burden to, someone who will inherit the crisis and somehow make it work. That's not generosity. That's desperation disguised as opportunity.
Hold your breath. Make a wish. Count to 3.
So we need to talk about one of my favorite songs, Pure Imagination. It's beautiful, it's haunting, and Gene Wilder sells it perfectly. But listen to what he's actually saying. He's singing about freedom while standing in a completely controlled environment. He's singing about imagination while every element of the factory serves his predetermined purposes. He's singing about possibility while children are being systemically destroyed for failing to meet his standards. The song is a lie. It's beautiful, but it's a lie. That's how Empire recruits you. It sings you songs about freedom while building your cage. And the boat ride? Oh, that boat ride, okay. Right after the Pure Imagination song, Wonka takes them on a psychedelic nightmare journey through a tunnel filled with nightmaric imagery. Insects crawling on faces, chickens getting beheaded, centipedes, lizards, disturbing lights and sounds. And Wonka is reciting poetry about the terror of not knowing where you're going or what's coming next. I love this so much as a kid for some odd reason. It showed me this dystopia of what is supposed to be a paradise, and maybe I recognize that as a kid in knowing my future for prophetic work. This is a dark underbelly of Pure Imagination. This is what happens when you surrender control to a genius who doesn't care about your well-being. The paradise and the nightmare are the same boat ride.
Hey, so it's Editing Josiah, and I just wanted to show you guys something that I didn't add in the original script. In Wonka's office, everything is halved out. So every object in his room is halved out. And obviously I looked this up online, and it said it was a design choice just to kind of give it a whimsical feel inside of the office. But I personally believe, obviously, there's something having to do with this correlating with the rest of the story. Me personally, I believe that the halved out version of everything kind of gives you the feeling within the story of everything only being half of the story. The fact that we go into the most powerful man's office and everything isn't even whole just kind of shows that him himself and also his story and everything put together is not the whole story. And I think what adds on top of this is us not knowing about Wonka fully, especially that we had to have a whole nother movie in 2023 or 2024. I don't know what exact time, but we had a whole other story about how he got to where he is and what it is that he's put together, and that was starring Timothée Chalamet. So I think it's a cool detail, and I think that's pretty awesome that they put that in there to have the half detail of everything, because it gives that feel of we're only giving half the story from Wonka.
And let's tie this all together with the pattern I've been showing you across all of my work. Every prophetic text, every transformative moment in history follows the same structure: source, messenger, warning, collapse, and reset. This isn't a coincidence. This is how divine communication operates in a material realm. And Willy Wonka expresses this pattern perfectly. Wonka represents the source, the creative force, the innovator, the genius who built something from nothing. He created candy that lasts forever and chocolate that can be transmitted through television. A 3-course meal and a stick of gum. He's brilliant. He's a visionary. He's the American entrepreneurial spirit that we're told to worship. The source isn't good or evil, it's just creative power. The question is, what serves that power? What grounds it? Wonka's genius isn't grounded in service or love or justice. It's grounded in ego and control, and it needs to be recognized as exceptional. That's when source becomes destructive. The golden tickets are the messenger, the transmission of possibility to the masses. You could win. You could have access. You could be special. The messenger always carries hope. It always suggests that change is possible, that elevation is available, that you don't have to accept your current condition. This is what keeps the system functioning. Without the golden tickets, without the possibility of winning, people would stop participating. They stop playing the game. The messenger has to give the real hope, even if the odds are astronomical, to maintain compliance. Children represents a warning. Augustus warns against gluttony and unchecked consumption. Veruca warns against entitlement and demanding more than you're allocated. Violet warns against competitive ego and the need to be recognized. Mike warns against disconnection from reality and worship of the spectacle. These aren't abstract moral lessons. These are specific diagnoses of how American consumer culture destroys its own people. The warning is always specific. It always shows consequences. It always gives you the opportunity to choose differently. Collapse is already happening in the story. Wonka is old, the factory is unsustainable, without an heir. The children are being systematically removed, and the abundance is revealing itself as emptiness. Chocolate that looks beautiful but has no nutrition. Entertainment that dazzles but hollows out the soul. The system is eating itself. This is where America is right now in 2026. The factory is still running, but everyone knows it can't last. The contradictions are becoming impossible to ignore. The wealth gap, the environmental collapse, the societal fragmentation, the mental health crisis, the addiction epidemic, these aren't separate problems. They're symptoms of systemic collapse. And the reset is Charlie inheriting the factory. But notice, the reset doesn't transform the system. It just puts new management in place. The Oompa Loompas are still there, the production is still hidden, the spectacle continues. The only thing that changes is who's in charge. That's not a real reset. That's a cosmetic change that allows the fundamental violence to continue. A real reset would mean dismantling the factory, distributing the wealth, and sharing the knowledge. But that would threaten the entire structure, so it's not even imaginable within the story's framework. This is the prophecy's final warning. The reset is coming, but it won't be what you think it is. It won't be the good-hearted taking power and making things just. It will be the same generation inheriting the same machinery of violence and convincing themselves they can manage it better. The cycle continues unless someone has courage to step outside the factory entirely and build something new. So where does all this leave us? We're living in the part of the story where the tour is almost over. The children have fallen, the warnings have been delivered, and the system is revealing its own contradictions. And we're all watching, waiting to see who gets the factory, as if that's the question that matters. But the real question isn't who inherits the factory. The real question is, why are we still in the factory? Why are we still buying chocolate bars hoping for golden tickets? Why are we still accepting that the means of production must be hidden? that labor must be exploited, that wealth must be concentrated, that 5 people can win while billions must lose. Roald Dahl gives us the prophecy in 1964, at the peak of American imperial power, right as the cracks were forming, and he showed us exactly how it would unfold. The spectacle, the lottery, the warnings, the casualties, the desperate search for someone to maintain the unsustainable. We're watching it happen in real time. The billionaires are the Wonkas, isolated, paranoid, surrounded by controlled environments, looking for heirs to inherit empires. They know we are collapsing. The golden tickets are everywhere, crypto promises, startup fantasies, influencer dreams, the belief that you just need one lucky break to escape the system that's crushing you. The children are all of us, consuming until we drown, demanding until we fall, competing until we inflate, disconnecting until we shrink. And Charlie is the myth that keeps selling us. The deserving poor who gets saved by the system, the obedient one who passes the loyalty test and gets rewarded, the next generation that will somehow make empire righteous by managing it with a pure heart. But we know how this ends. Charlie becomes Wonka. The cycle continues. Nothing fundamentally changes. Unless we recognize the prophecy for what it is. Unless we understand that the warning isn't don't be like Augustus or Veruca or Violet or Mike. The warning is don't stay in the factory. Don't accept the terms of the game. Don't spend your life searching for golden tickets when the whole lottery is designed to keep you playing while the house always wins. The prophecy is clear. The factory will close. The tour will end. The spectacle will fade. And when it does, what will you have built that's actually real? What have you created that serves life rather than ego? What community have you nurtured? What knowledge have you shared? What love have you participated in? What justice have you worked towards? Because when the Wonkas of the world are gone, when the factories are empty, when the chocolate river stops flowing and the golden tickets are revealed as worthless pieces of paper, what remains is the work we did outside the system, the connections we built that weren't transactional, the purpose we cultivated that wasn't about winning. This is the word of 2026. The factory is closing. Not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but it's closing. When you can feel it, the desperation, the mania, the double-down insistence that everything is fine while the walls crack around us. The next generation looking at the inheritance being offered and saying, we don't want your factory. We don't want your empire. We don't want to maintain your machinery of violence. We'll build something different. And that's the real reset. Not Charlie inheriting the factory, but a generation saying no to the whole framework and choosing to build in alignment with truth, with purpose, with love. Building systems that serve life instead of ego. Building communities that share abundance instead of hoarding it. Building futures that don't require exploitation to function. That's what Willy Wonka was trying to tell us, whether Roald Dahl knew it or not. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. I'm working on this so late at night. It's like almost 3 o'clock in the morning. And I really enjoyed this video so much. And that's exactly why I'm here. And I'm trying to make the best of this outro because this one was a favorite of mine. And I believe that lots and lots of people are going to enjoy it. So if you did enjoy it, go ahead and make sure to like it, subscribe if you want. And I'll be here for future videos. I'm going to work on some other stuff. If you have any recommendations as well, go ahead and drop them. And I hope all of you have a great day. God bless.